Hey, you remember this from last year? This video that I made? Remember? No you don't. Of course you don't. Let's talk about something else then. Notice anything different about me? Well, it's not the most significant of changes, let me tell you that. Like what, I just turned from one white dog into another. I have to admit, not very innovative in terms of a rebranding, but well, I have hands now, so that's a plus. I mean, I can point at stuff, and I guess not much more really. Drawing is really hard, okay? And I don't really know what I'm doing, but other people seem to be doing the same thing, so let's just give it a shot. Why not? Just some important information before we continue though. I'd like everyone to know that this is not some original character that I made up. It's stolen. Let's think of a less blatant word here, like taken. Yeah, taken could work. It was taken from the album cover of Twin Fantasy by Car Seat Headrest, which also happens to be one of my favorite albums, so it all works out nicely. So, where were we? Ah yes, the video that everyone forgot. We went off a bit of a tangent there, didn't we? So, about a year ago, I promised I would read and review Guards from the Discworld series. I said it would be done by Christmas 2020, a statement which, mind you, was backed by rigorous scientific calculations. But as you know, it has been a year since, with nothing delivered as yet, so something has definitely gone awry. I know my calculations are correct, so we can probably chalk this up to some 1 in a million cosmic anomaly. What's that? You don't agree? Occam's razor, you say? Come on, are you really gonna cite something somebody from the 13th century came up with? You know how dumb those people can be, trust me, this definitely has nothing to do with my laziness. Anyways, that's not a problem now. Point is, I finished reading, so may I finally present the long-awaited book review. So, what's the main selling point of this book? Well, in my opinion, it's comedy. I swear to God, this book is filled to the brim with jokes. If you zoom out and squint hard enough, you might just mistake it for some comedy handbook of some sort. There's a joke in literally every other page, and of course, not all of them will make you laugh or smile, but it does hit the mark pretty frequently. The kind of humor in this book is, I would say, of the surreal and absurd type, which, by the way, is an actual literary category of comedy. So, what is surreal humor? It's basically something that is funny because it doesn't make sense, is ridiculous, or very unlikely to happen.
No flipping way. Just act natural.
Do you have any idea how fast you were going?
I'm pretty sure I was below 10 above the speed limit.
It is the subversion of the audience's expectation and the unpredictability of the situation where the amusement is derived from. A classic example, which I'm sure everyone at least knows about, is Alice in Wonderland. There's literally a scene where Alice, while swimming for her dear life, meets a mouse, assumes that it is French, and proceeds to start the conversation with "Where is my cat?" Which, I don't know if I'm spelling this correctly, but if I did, it's French for "Where is my cat?" and therefore this offends the mouse. Now let me ask you, does that scene make any sort of sense whatsoever? No, it clearly does not, but that's the fucking point. I'm sorry, I derailed again. What was I talking about? Ah yes, Guards. I really enjoyed the comedy in that book because everything, and I mean everything, even the world building in Guards is just infused with comedy. You have this city that is run by this guy called the Patrician, and he goes, you know what? It's pretty darn expensive to have the police lying around. What if I form a deal with the Thieves Guild and in exchange for not arresting them, they're allowed to steal, but only up till a daily quota. Holy shit, did I just come up with a way to reduce crime without the use of a police force? Fuck, I'm a genius. And that's what basically happened. The politics and economics of this world is just plain ridiculous, and there's a lot more examples. But it's not just the politics and economics. So, in this world, dragons exist. And I think I should have mentioned that this book is a fantasy novel. That's, I think, an important bit of information that I left out. So just please pretend that I have said that already at some point before. Alright, let's continue. So dragons exist, and usually everyone portrays them as these noble, majestic winged beasts. But Terry Prattchet, the guy who wrote the book, took one good look at the stereotype and said, "No thanks, let me do the exact opposite." What I'm about to read is a passage from this book detailing just how terribly designed dragons are. I'm afraid they're not very well designed creatures, dragons. They would never have survived at all, except that their home swamps were isolated and short of predators. Not that the dragon made good eating anyway. Once you'd taken away the leathery skin and enormous flight muscles, what was left must have been like biting into a badly run chemical factory. No wonder dragons were always ill. They relied on permanent stomach trouble for supplies of fuel. Most of their brain power was taken up with controlling the complexities of then digestion, which could distill flame-producing fuels from the most unlikely ingredients. They could even rearrange their internal plumbing overnight to deal with difficult processes. They lived on a chemical knife edge the whole time. One misplaced hiccup, and they were geography. I know it's supposed to be history instead, but they used geography. It's sort of an inside joke that they do that. The failure of most characters to understand metaphors is actually a recurring theme in the novel, and it leads to some pretty interesting and funny situations. So that's why. Alright, gonna continue with reading the passage now. And when it came to choosing nesting sites, the female had all the common sense and mothering instinct of a brick. Vimes wondered why people had been so worried about dragons in the olden days. If there was one in the cave near you, all you had to do was wait until it self-ignited, blew itself up, or died of acute indigestion. Dragons in this world are a miracle, not in the sense that they're noble or majestic, but that they're just so evolutionarily unfavorable, so much so that it is one of the universe's mysteries as to how the fuck they're still able to exist. Something you may have noticed while I was reading the passage is the scientific tone and nature of the writing style. The passage even implements actual scientific theories like evolution and whatnot. Now, this is surprising because, remember, we're reviewing a fantasy novel over here, and science is the exact opposite of that. But Terry doesn't seem to mind, and good on him, because this, as a person who's really into science, I absolutely love. Terry has his own ideas about dragons. He doesn't follow what everyone else already presumes a dragon should be, and he even went an extra mile by reasoning scientifically about his ideas. I'm sure most other writers in his position would come up with a more fantasy-based explanation as to why dragons suck, like maybe the dragon bloodline is cursed by some wicked demon lord or something. Point is, the book introduces some unconventional ideas, and Terry is also capable of explaining them in unconventional ways, and this makes for an interesting read. Now, back to comedy, because we aren't just done with that yet. The comedy not only applies on a global scale but also on a local scale, such as in the interactions between the characters. The conversations are hardly ever serious, and it's basically just an exchange of dumb ideas and words being said. Like, an example that comes to mind is this scene where the Night Watch, which is basically the police force, they're beating and arresting some people, and the fight was pretty one-sided in favor of the Night Watch. And after the dust settles, the captain, which goes by the name Vimes, says, "Charge them for assaulting an officer of the watch in the execution of his duty, and also for resisting arrest." One of the underling goes, "Under Section 7 of the Public Order Act of 1457? "Yes," said Vimes solemnly. "Yes, I suppose so. But they didn't resist very much, sir." And the captain replies after a short pause, "Well, attempting to resist arrest then. Charge them with attempting to resist arrest." And the joke is, we all know that murder is a charge, and attempted murder is a charge that is a step below that, in the sense that you have failed to execute the murder, and so they repeat the same idea here, with arrest instead of murder. And obviously this is not a real charge. The captain is clearly just making shit up, and it is obvious from the dialogue that he is doing that. Alright, now enough of the comedy, let's move on to the story. I have to warn you beforehand that I will be terrible at explaining the ups and downs of the story. You see, some people are really good at that. They can tell you what they like and dislike about the story and the characters without spoiling anything at all. I, unfortunately, am not one of those people, so you may find the next section to be a bit lacking. Regardless, let us start. So, basically, most of the times when I was reading the book, I wasn't flipping over to the next page to find out what happens next in the story. Instead, I wanted to find the next joke. I wanted to find the next cool piece of detail, world building, or more of the weird and funny interactions between the characters. That is not to say the story itself is bad, but just that everything else about the book very severely outshines the story aspect, and that leaves me caring not too much about the story. And I'm certain that quite a few people will feel the same way. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. A book doesn't need an outstanding story to be good, and that's because not everyone is reading books solely for the story. And if you're one of them, I would highly recommend this book. Now the characters, they don't have much depth, just an okay amount. Maybe for some of the characters it's a bit too shallow, but again, that didn't put me off from reading because I wasn't focused on these characters and this story that they're a part of and that they're trying to tell. It's like everything else about the book is so good that it's almost impossible to focus on the plot and the characters. Damn, I love how this part is supposed to be dedicated to talking about the story and the characters, but instead I stress again how good everything else is. Anyways, I need to end this review soon. It's taking up quite a bit of time already. I give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's a must-read for people who are into comedy in books, and also those who are okay with books that don't focus on the plot and the characters too much. That's it from me. See you next time. Hey, it's me again. I know I stopped the video already, but I forgot to include this. So basically, for the first 30, 40 or so pages, it's gonna be a huge turn-off. At least it was for me, because everything was just very difficult to grasp and understand. The language and the writing style, like, I have an example of it, like in the video where I try to calculate how long it would take to read the book, and I did that by reading the first page, taking a note of how long that took, and then just doing some math to figure out how long it would take to read the entire book that way. And you can see what the first page looks like. I'll even include a snippet somewhere.
Then she opened her great, booming, rotten heart to you, cut you off, ball, thing, ants. Yeah, that's it. Never knew where you stood. God, this is hard to read.
So yeah, it is weird to grasp and take a hold of everything for the first 30 or so pages. I don't know if the writing got easier to understand, or I myself evolved to adapt to this weird and hard to understand writing style. So just keep in mind when you're deciding to read this book, just push through the first couple of pages and hopefully it gets better. Alright, actually see you this time.